Good day everyone. I am Jessica Ajas from PCBet 01401A. Discuss the topic in Business Law and Regulation, Corporation Law. Before we start, let's define corporation. Corporation is a legal entity that is separate and distinct from its owner. Ibig sabihin, it is an organization or usually a group of people or a company authorized by the state to act as a single entity and recognized as such in law for certain purposes. Ang mga dating miyembro nakarehistro bilang isang korporasyon ay itinatatag sa pamamagitan ng charter. May iba't ibang klase ng mga corporation, ngunit sila ay madalas na inuuri ng batas kung saan ay sila ay nahati sa dalawa. Una na dyan ang stock corporation. Corporation which have capital stock divided into shares and are authorized to distribute to the holders of such share dividends or allotment of the surplus from profit on the basis of the shares held are stock corporation. Na kung saan ang mga organisasyong kumikita na naglalabas ng stock sa mga shareholders upang makalikom ng kapital sa bawat bahagi na kumakatawan sa bahagyang pagmamay-ari ng korporasyon at pagbibigay sa mga shareholders ng ilang karapatan sa pamamagitan na humuhubog sa pagpatakaran ng kumpanya. Gayunpaman, ang korporasyon at ang mga miyembro nito sa pangkalahatan ay itinuturing magkakaibang ng mga legal na entity. Ang prime example ay Lands of the Philippines and Development of the Philippines. Good morning everyone. I am Jessica Ajas from PCBet 01401A. Discuss the topic in Business Law and Regulation, Corporation Law. Before we start, let's define corporation. Corporation is a legal entity that is separate and distinct from its owner. Ibig sabihin, a group of people or a company authorized by the state to act as single entity and recognized as such in law for a certain purposes. Ang mga dating miyembrong nakarehistro bilang isang korporasyon na itinatatag sa pamamagitan ng charter. May iba't ibang klase ng mga korporasyon ngunit sila ay madalas na inuuri ng batas kung saan sila ay nahati sa dalawa. Una na dyan ang stock corporation. What is a stock corporation? Corporation which have capital stock divided into share and are authorized to distribute to the holders of such share dividends or allotment of the surplus profit on the basis of the share held are stock corporation. Ibig sabihin, ang mga organisasyong kumikita na naglalabas ng stock sa mga shareholders upang makakalikom ng kapital sa bawat bahagi ng kumpakatawan sa bahagyang pagmamay-ari ng korporasyon at bibigay sa mga shareholders ng ilang karapatan sa pagmamay-ari na humuhubog sa mga bawat patakaran. Gayunpaman, ang korporasyon at mga miyembro nito sa pangkalahatan ay itinuturing bilang magkaibang mga legal na entity. One of the example of stock corporation is GOCC, which is the prime example are the Land Banks of the Philippines and Development Bank of the Philippines. Ang pangalawa naman ay non-stock corporation. What is a non-stock corporation? A non-stock corporation is one where no part of its income is distributed or distributable as dividends to its member, trustee, or officers, provided that any profit which a non-stock corporation may obtain as an incidental to its operation shall, whenever necessary or proper, be used for the furtherance of the purposes for which the corporation was organized. Ibig sabihin, ito ang korporasyon na hindi naglalabas ng pagbabahagi ng stock. Ito ay may layunin na hindi magbayad ng mga dividend sa shareholders. Ang non-stock corporation ay madalas na may mga miyembro, ngunit ang mga kasapi nito ay hindi pagmamay-ari at hindi sila nagbabahagi sa pananalapi mula sa kanilang pagiging kasapi. Isa nga sa mga halimbawa nito ay St. Luke Medical Center Incorporation. Next is Manila International Airport Authority, a stock or non-stock corporation. MIAA is not organized as a stock or non-stock corporation because it has no capital divided into share and it has no members. Non-stock corporation must have members even we assume that the government is considered as the sole member of MIAA. This will not make MIAA a non-stock corporation. Next is the other classes. Una na dyan, as to purpose. May dalawang klase ang as to purpose. Una na dyan is public corporation. Public corporation, a corporation organized for the government purpose, a portion of the state for general good and welfare. Ang layunin ng public corporation ay to provide goods and services to the public at reasonable prices. Though they also earn profits, their primary objective is to help the people in getting various services. Pangalawa ay ang private corporation. A corporation formed for some private purpose, benefit, and end. The primary goal of private corporation founder is to reduce liability between the owners and the business. Pangatlo ay government-owned or controlled corporation. A government-owned or controlled corporation owned by the government directly or through instrumentalists, either wholly or whether where applicable as in the case of stock corporation to the extent at least 51% of its capital. The GOCC are important instrument of social and economic policy of developing countries like the Philippines. Next is quasi-public corporation. A private corporation which has accepted from the state the grant of franchise or contract involving the performance of public duties but which is organized for profit. The company can also issue shares of stock to the public or any major stock exchange. But unlike a private corporation that operates primarily to benefit the shareholders, the board of directors in a quasi-public corporation has a dual responsibility of carrying out the public purposes of the company and obtaining a profit for shareholders. Next is as the legal right to corporate existence ay may apat na klase. Una ay de jure corporation na kung saan karamihan sa mga entities seek the de jure corporation status because it affords limited liability for directors, officers, and shareholders, which means they are shielded from personal liability for the corporation obligation. Pangalawa, de facto corporation. Basically, a good faith attempt to become a corporation, but due to some technicality does not fulfill every requirement needed. From legal references, a de facto corporation is defined as one that is organized with tolerable compliance with the requirements of incorporation and allowed to exist and exercise the power of a corporation until its existence is assailed by the state. Pangatlo, corporation by estoppel. This means that all person or firm are assumed to act as a corporation knowing it to be without authority to do so. Corporation by estoppel refers to someone contracting and dealing with a business as if it were a corporation. In so doing, it is an admission that the entity is a corporation and therefore estopped to deny its incorporation should an action arise out of the contract or course of dealing. Pang-apat, corporation by prescription is one where corporate powers have been exercised by a body of men for such a length of time to raise presumption of the grant of an ancient charter to their predecessor, such as the Roman Catholic. Is as to law of incorporation ay may dalawang classes. Una ay domestic corporation. It refers to a company that is incorporated in and conduct business affairs in its own country. Also, this is a business that operates within its home country. For example, San Miguel Corporation, Top Frontier Investment Holdings Incorporation, SM Investment Corporation, and Manila Electric Corporation. Ilan lang yan sa mga halimbawa na domestic corporation. Pangalawa, foreign corporation is a corporation organized, authorized, or existent under the laws of any foreign country. Also, a term used in the United States to describe an existing corporation or other type of corporate or LLC that conduct business in a state or jurisdiction than where it was originally incorporated. For example, if a corporation is incorporated under the law of Delaware but does business in California, it will need to qualify to do business as a foreign corporation in California. Next, as to whether they are open to the public or not, have two classes. Una ay open corporation, a corporation which is open to any person who may wish to become a stockholder or member thereof. Means a corporation whose ownership share are available for exchange on a public market. For example, agricultural greenhouses, and more. Next, ay closed corporation, opposite to the open corporation. The ultimate goal is to establish a reputation and develop a product that will eventually allow them to go public, opening up their stock to owners across the country or allowing more shareholders to buy into the company as an investment. Next is as to relationship of management and control. Ay mayroong dalawang klase. Una ay parent holding corporation. A parent holding corporation is a corporation that has a subsidiary which is a partially or wholly owned separate business that is controlled by a parent holding company. Next is subsidiary corporation. Although the parent company can usually control most of the shares of this subsidiary company, it allows them to take control and take responsibility for all their decisions related to the financial and operational system. Next is the number of persons who compose them. Have two classes. First is corporate aggregate. Are private offices constituted for the primary purpose of doing business. Next is corporation council, consisting of only one member for the purpose of administering and managing as trustee and affairs and property. The objective of corporation council is similar to that of corporation aggregate. In it's a single person holding a public office in a series of succession, meaning thereby that with his death, his property right and liabilities do not extinguish, but they are vested in the person succeeds him. Next is as to whether they are for religious purposes or not. have two classes. Una ay ecclesiastical corporation, a corporation concerned only with religious matter and consisting wholly of ecclesiastic such as the dean and charter of a cathedral church. Pangalawa, lay corporation. It contrasts with ecclesiastical corporation, wherein it organized with purposes other than spiritual purposes. Example of lay corporation in the Philippines: Ascent Microtechnologies Incorporation, Sinochem Crop Protection Philippines Incorporation, TexDen Corporation, and Flock Corporation. Next, as to whether they are for the charitable purposes or not. First is eleemosynary corporation is a corporation created for charitable purposes or one supported by charity. It is a corporation created not for private gain or profit, but for the administration of charitable trusts or for charitable purposes, such as the maintenance of a hospital. And last, civil corporation is a corporation organized for business purposes. Contrast with the eleemosynary corporation. Example of civil engineering company are Section Marketing, JGC Philippines, SMEC Philippines, ECSA Incorporated, and SMCC Philippines. Now, let's proceed to the general law versus specific law. A corporation is created by operation of law. It acquires a juridical personality, either special law or a general law. General law: a law that is unrestricted as to time, is applicable throughout the entire territory, subject to the power of the legislature that enacted it, and applies to all persons in the same class, under which a private corporation may be formed or organized in the Corporation Code, the requirement of which must be complied with by those wishing to incorporate, thus giving rise to its right to exist and act as legal entity. A government corporation is normally created by a special law, which is an act of the legislature which has reference to a particular person, place, or interest. A private law in distinction from a general law or public law. Last is Section 4. Corporation is created by special law or charters. Corporation created by special law or charter should be governed primarily by the provision of the special law or charter creating them or applicable to them, supplemented by the provision of this code insofar as they are applicable. The Constitution expressly authorized the legislature to create government-owned or controlled corporation through special charter only if this entity requires to meet the twin condition of common good and economic viability. In other words, Congress has no power to create government-owned or controlled corporation with special charters, unless they are made to comply with the two conditions of a common good and economic viability. That's all po. Thank you.